fighting far afield of the deep sea ships beneath the Trojan wall, so Achilles never feared his friend was dead. He must be still alive, pressing on to the very gates, but he'd come back. Achilles never dreamed Patroclus would storm all Troy without him, not even with him. No time, and again his mother Thetis told him this was not to be. She told him alone, in secret, always bringing word of mighty Zeus's plans, but not this time. One thing she never told him, his own mother, what a terrible thing had taken place. His dearest friend in arms on earth lay dead. Just to be reminded that, uh-oh, this is going to be an issue. We then have this amazing scene about Achilles and his ponies. These two immortal ponies. We're going to see this again in the next book, at line 490 or so. But standing clear of the fray, Achilles' horses wept from the time they first had sensed their driver's death, brought down in the dust by man-killing Hector. Now, scholars have pointed out the compelling nature about these immortal horses, because the Greeks understood a certain kind of way of seeing the world, as we said in earlier lectures, where you've got the gods, then you've got humans, then you've got the beasts. In this case, though, because these horses are immortal, in some ways you have this powerful recognition that humans are even more wretched than animals, because animals don't understand their death. As we have often said, the only difference between you and a fly is you know about fly swatters. And to that degree, go back to our comments on Burns to a mouse, to that degree, animals somehow have it better. Of course, it is the fact that humans die that will lead us, right, to have the capacity for some glory. But at line 510, we have another interesting aside soliloquy by Zeus. Zeus pitied the horses, watching their tears flow. He shook his head and addressed his own deep heart. Poor creatures. By the way, this word poor is the same word wretched, again, that's sometimes translated just like it was about Hector putting on that armor. Why did we give you to King Peleus, a mortal doomed to death? You immortal beasts who never age or die, so you could suffer the pains of wretched men? There is nothing alive more agonized than man, of all the breath and crawl across the earth. That notion that of everything that breathes and crawls across the earth, we think about that line, crawls across the earth, as I put T.S. Eliot's Prufrock, I could have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. Zeus says, the worst thing in the world are humans, because they know they're going to die and there's no way to escape it, right? He says, will never permit Hector to have you, right? The arms are enough for him. Achilles' weaponry, right? Priam's son with his empty, futile boasting. But I will fill his legs and heart with strength, so you can save a great Greek warrior, Automedon, right? Bear him from the fighting, back to the fleet. But still I will give the Trojans glory, killing all the way to the beach ships till the sun sinks and the blessed darkness sweeps across the sky. In other words, that is to say, the end of the longest day. And with that, he breathed fresh fire in the team. They shook the dust from their manes and galloped off, speeding the fast chariot just where the armies clashed, right? And we're told that Automedon fought as he rode, though grieving for his friend. We then will have Achilles and this recognition that Achilles is waiting back. We've got the body of Patroclus then still always being fought over. We have this remarkable line at roughly line 620. And now, again, the fight for Patroclus flared, stretched to the breaking point, mounting in tears and fury, since Pallas fired their blood, Athena, sweeping down from the heavens, sent by the Father, thundering far and wide to drive the Argives on. But now his mind had changed, Zeus, at least for a moment. Yes, down like a lurid rainbow, Zeus sends, arching down to mortal men from the high skies, a sign of war or blizzard to freeze the summer's warmth and put a halt to men's work on the face of the earth in hairy flocks. So shrouded round in a lurid cloud came Pallas now, and drove in the Argives' ranks to fire up each man. This idea of the rainbow is, of course, going to take us back to the Noah story of the book of Genesis, right? We then have a recognition by Ajax and Menelaus. They know that, in fact, Zeus is fighting. Lion-hearted Ajax and Menelaus were not blind, we're told at line 705. They saw Zeus turn the tide toward the Trojans. Ajax voiced frustration first. Dear God, enough. Any idiot boy can see how Father Zeus himself supports these Trojans. All their weapons land, no matter who flings them, brave fighter or bad. Zeus guides them all to the mark. Ours all clatter to ground, wasted, harmless shots. So come, alone as we are, find the best way out. How do we pull the body clear, Patroclus' body, and save ourselves, make it back to our lines, and bring our friends some joy? Every time this friends some joy, well, we know what he's talking about. What he's saying is, I'm not sure I want to go back to the camp without the body of Patroclus. It's going to be enough that we don't have Achilles' armor. If we come back without Patroclus' body, could be bad, right? All hope gone that murderous Hector's rage and invincible spear arm can be stopped. Not now. He'll hurl himself against our blackened hulls. If only an aid could speed the word to Achilles, I'm certain he's not heard the dreadful news that his dear friend lies dead. Wherever I look, no use. I cannot see the Achaean for the mission. Such swirling mists blots out the men and horses both. O Father Zeus, Ajax says, draw our armies clear of the cloud. Give us a bright sky. Give us back our sight. Kill us all in the light of day at least, since killing's now your pleasure. So he prayed. And the Father, filled with pity, seeing Ajax weep, he dispelled the mist at once, drove off the cloud, and the sun came blazing forth. And the whole war swung into view clear that instant. And Ajax called the Lord of the war cry, Menelaus, look hard for Antilochus. Now, our royal friend, if you see him still alive, brave Nestor's son, tell him to run the news to great Achilles quickly. His dearest friend in arms on earth lies dead. Well, this is exactly what will happen, right? And so Menelaus will then be ready to speak with Antilochus at line 765. Menelaus, O king, you turned your shining eyes, scanning the crowds of comrades, front and rear, trying to see if Nestor's son was still alive. He marked him quickly, out on the left flank and rousing cohorts, driving them back to war. And the red-headed captain halted near and called, turn this way, Antilochus, prince, and hear the news, dreadful news. Would to God it had never happened. You see for yourself, I know how Father Zeus sends waves of ruin breaking down our lines. Victory goes to Troy, our best Achaeans dead. Patroclus, a stunning loss to all our armies. Quick, run to Achilles' moorings by the beach and tell him all. Perhaps, but he must be fast. He can bring the body safely back to his ship, stripped as Patroclus is. Hector with that flashing helmet has his armor. Antilochus, we're told at line 783, listened closely, hating every word. He stood there speechless a while, struck dumb, tears filling his eyes, his strong voice choked, but he still would not neglect Atrides' order. In other words, he's got to go and he's got to tell. Finally, we're told that the Greeks find some way to get the body of Patroclus and start moving it back towards the camp. At line 812, after the urging, up from the earth they caught the body of Patroclus in their arms, hoisting it high above their heads with a great heave. And Trojan forces crowding behind them shouted out when they saw the Argive fighters lift the corpse. They swept in like hounds that fling themselves at a wild boar. So we've got that simile thing going on. Of course, it's significant that this idea of the simile being about the dogs, right? Okay, of course, because we've heard a lot about dogs and bodies, right? The Trojans were told at line 820, so the Trojans kept on pressing squad on squad, stabbing with swords, and it will be the two Ajaxes, that will, in fact, stand there to try to defend. So you've got the Greeks pulling the body of Patroclus away. We're going to hear in the next book that, in fact, the Greeks still have not properly, fully secured the body of Patroclus. That will fall to the Greeks only after Achilles will get the news. We know that's coming, right? Because Antilochus is going to tell them in the next book. How would you like to have that for your duty, right? Okay, let's jump to 2a quickly. Obviously, the importance of remembering the fallen is central to a message to this book, right? Protecting the body of Patroclus is symbolic for remembering, of course, the fallen. Another message, success, think about this one. Success can only happen in this book, we realize, together. That tug of war, right? And, of course, no one wants to tell Achilles, right? They know about the rage of Achilles. And so you've got kind of this, sometimes you have to give news, and it's not, it's not the best of situations, right? That you got that situation that you got to tell. At 2b, well, the symbol here, I mean, there's a lot of them. I'm going to argue that the body of Patroclus is itself a symbol. Of course, the horses of Achilles are also a symbol. But that armor of Achilles is also that symbol. That is to say, every time that armor goes on somebody, it's kind of like the kiss of death. The irony, of course, is that Patroclus wanted to feed Sarpedon's body to the dogs. Hector wants to feed Patroclus's body to the dogs. And Achilles will be the one that actually feeds a body to the dogs. And that will, of course, be Hector himself. Tragic. Very tragic, right? At 3a, well, what is your favorite text to save a wounded person or maybe even a corpse? I have students that often will think of that scene in Forrest Gump where he has to try and save, when he's in Vietnam, trying to save as many of the fallen and as many of the potentially dead as he can. I haven't mentioned All Quiet on the Western Front as a title because in every one of these lectures I could have mentioned that as a 3A text. But I'm going to mention Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, that classic story about the return of a fallen warrior, of a fallen friend, all the way back from Montana down to Texas, right? At 3B, to finish. What is a time you had to defend someone that you loved, that you cared about? You either had to do it alone or you had to do it as a group. That one obviously brings to mind. How about this one? What was a time that you had to give really bad news to somebody and you knew telling that somebody that bad news, the way Antilochus is going to have to tell Achilles, it was going to be bad? Well, we turn to book 18, and that's going to be the tragedy of all tragedies, because Achilles is back in the tents waiting, and he's going to get told, right? Patroclus is dead, your armor is gone, Achilles is going to need new armor, right? One of the most famous books of the Iliad we're about to see in book 18 will be, in fact, this whole thing about Achilles hearing about the death of his deepest friend, closest friend, his grieving, and then, of course, his need for new armor. And that's going to be one of the most famous sections in all of the Iliad, when Hephaestus will, in fact, make him new armor. I hope you'll come back and continue our study. Thank you.